Namaste and greetings of the day, Ashwinji.
Hello. Hello, Tanishi. How are you? Nice to see you.
I am good. Nice to see you as well. I hope you're doing well. Uh, to
Good.
start with your introduction right now, I would love to introduce you to the audience who would be watching us. Today with us, we have Aswin Sekhar ji, India's first professional meteor scientist and globally recognized name in celestial mechanics. Currently based at the Paris Observatory in France, Dr. Shekhar's groundbreaking research on meteoroid stream dynamics and the role of relativity in space has not only shaped our understanding of the cosmos, but also earned him the rare honor of having a minor planet named after him. 33928 Ashwin Sekhar. Beyond the lab, he's a passionate science communicator working closely with policymakers and educators to inspire young minds, especially from India's rural and tribal communities, to reach the star. Thank you so much, Ashwin Sekhar ji, for joining us for the Youth Ki Baat podcast today. Namaste.
Namaste. You're very welcome, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Ashwinji, I would like to know from a small town of Otapalam to having a planet named after you. What was young Ashwin like? And did you always look at the stars differently? Did you always have a fascination towards them? What was it like?
Well, it has been a long journey, interesting journey with lots of ups and downs. And the young Ashwin Shekhar was someone who enjoyed a lot of swimming and who liked to look at machines. So I remember spending a lot of time in my home pond in my small village in Kerala, swimming a lot, and also enjoying looking at very simple machines, like, for example, the sort of pumps, the sort of water pumps in at home, mixer grinder in kitchen, and very simple machines, which some people find it very silly to look at, but I found them extremely interesting because of these moving parts and propellers and stuff. So you have these toy boats and stuff, right? And you can actually put it in a bucket of water and it goes around and stuff. But those things used to be very fascinating for me, these looking at small propellers working. And so I think at that age, I was certainly interested in machines and certainly interested in things related to movement. So I was fascinated by these huge engines of trains. So those days there were these huge diesel engines, and now a lot of these electric engines. At that time, the electric engines were just coming up. So I found them extremely fascinating, and I think that's my first step to science. And later on, I was more interested in chemistry because when I first visited a chemistry lab in my school, I was fascinated with all these interesting bubbly things happening with acids and metals and so on. So I started a small lab at my own home, and I used to play with these chemicals. Luckily, no disaster happened, but I was playing with things like a little sort of so-called dangerous things like acids and metals and burning them and mixing them and so on. But that also gave me a sort of a new dimension into science. But my early childhood, I was mostly interested into engineering and chemistry. It was later in life I got interested in physics. And that was essentially because of reading a book by Stephen Hawking called The Brief History of Time. And that actually sort of sparked my curiosity into cosmology, astronomy, physics, and so on. And much later in life, I also had the privilege of meeting Stephen Hawking during a conference in Cambridge. And I told him that your book, Brief History of Time, inspired me. So I told his nurse that I wanted to tell him this. So the nurse said, then why don't you speak to him directly? So I told this to him. I said, Professor Hawking, I was very fascinated by reading Brief History of Time, and that inspired me to come into science. So he said in his computer synthesized voice, thank you, Ashwin, for giving your kind words about my book. So that was a very special moment in my life.
That is really, really inspiring. That is an amazing story to hear from. It was basically your curiosity that drove you into places like that, your want to learn more and more, and the little observation that you made seeing all of the things around you. That is extremely inspiring. You chose space over traditional careers and became India's first meteor scientist. What inspired you to take this path, and how did it feel when a minor planet was named after you?
Okay, so there are two questions. I'll answer the second question first. Uh, so, uh, this hearing this minor planet announcement, as you can imagine, it's a very exciting thing, but it was also very surprising. It was a very pleasant coincidence and a surprise. So this happened during a grand event at the Asteroids, Comets, Meteors Conference in Flagstaff in Arizona in 2023. So there is a social event where they announced the minor planets in honor of scientists. So I saw this name being announced and the citation and stuff. So I was very humbled and honored. And I was very grateful for the very senior scientists in my field who nominated my name, recognizing my work in meteor science. So that was a very special moment, and we enjoyed with some fine American beer with some of our colleagues there. So that's the second question part. The first question, say it again.
Why did you choose a traditional career?
Okay,
Why didn't you choose
an
a
unconventional career, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I know this might sound blasphemy in India, but I was never interested in engineering or being a doctor. So I had absolutely no inclination to for the traditional career paths, as it were, to become like a chartered accountant or a doctor or an engineer or some sort of software professional IT people. None of these things interested me. At that time in my school days, the only thing which I really wanted to sort of become or which really fascinated me was to become someone like Vishy Anand, to become the world chess champion, or being someone like Zakir Hussain, being the real master of tabla in the whole world and stuff. I used to play a bit of tabla during my school days for concerts. I mean, school concerts and stuff. So those were things in my mind, but very soon I realized I'm never going to be a Zakir Hussain or a Vishy Anand. So I thought maybe I should probably channel my interest in pure science. So that's how I came into this. And this meteor science thing is a very niche, very narrow subfield in astronomy. So there is hardly anyone working in our part of the world in this field. And it's the same situation even now. So I was looking at various ways how to get involved in this. The reason why I was interested in this topic was my uncle and my dear mentor, Krishna Warrior, who used to be a scientist in SIDAC Trivandrum, he once encouraged me to look up the sky for something called the Leonid's meteor storm in 1998, when I was barely like 13 years old. So when I looked at this Leonid's meteor storm from the terrace of at my home, at this small village in Kerala called Nellaya, I was actually captivated by this cosmic fireworks. So that actually sort of triggered my curiosity to learn about these things, to understand these things, and see if I can also do a wee bit of contribution into these things. So then, I mean, life happened. A long time went by, and luckily, I was able to do a PhD under the guidance of the very same meteor science guru who did this prediction, which I saw in 1998. So I was fortunate to work with this Scottish astronomer gentleman called David Asher, who predicted this Leonid's meteor storm way back in 1998. And I did my PhD under his guidance. And he taught me the sort of tricks and tips to how to forecast these meteor storms and look at the past, present, and future evolution and so on. So that's how I came into this game. And as I say, there is so much opportunities for youngsters these days. So I encourage more people to come to the world of meteor science. It shouldn't be just me from India. So I wish there are also more youngsters who show some interest in these things and come to my field.
That exactly brings me to the next question, which is what exactly is meteor science and why should young Indians care about it and
Okay,
want to
so
learn about it? Yes, yes.
sure. So meteor science in very simple terms, it's just shooting stars, just a fancy name for shooting stars. Then it's essentially about studying shooting stars and fireballs coming from outer space to Earth. So why should we care at all? The simple reason being these things can actually be something which could affect your own existence on this planet. So so look let's look into past a wee bit. So if you look at like this idea of dinosaurs getting extinct on this planet. A huge species on this planet got extinct due to a fireball, which came from outer space, so about 65 million years back. So there's this funny joke amongst nerds that why did dinosaurs get extinct? It's because they didn't have a space program. So that actually shows it's important for us to study these objects, track these objects, and so on. And now you don't have to go so distant into past. Let's look at something called 1908. There was this event called Tunguska event in Siberia in Russia, which flattened and burned a whole forest there. And this was also due to a fireball hit from outer space, a small asteroid or a big meteor, whatever you want to call. And much recent in history, just like more than a decade back in 2013, there was something called the Chelyabinsk fireball event. And this was a small asteroid, a big fireball of the size of about 20 meters, I think, which hit this small city in Russia, and loads of buildings were shattered, and hundreds and hundreds of people were hospitalized. So these things can happen. It's not just like a sci-fi script from a movie. So these things are real things which can happen. So the reason why we need to study these objects is because the more you learn about these things, then there is more effective methods to prevent these things, to forecast these things, to predict these things, to sort of mitigate these risks. So that's my simple marketing mantra, as it were, to say why should we care and why should the youngsters show interest in these things.
That is great. You really explained it like somebody who is even 15-year-old would learn about meteor science through it, would know exactly why we need it and why we should care about it. You have worked really hard to bring science to rural and tribal schools in India. What keeps you so passionate about the outreach? What keeps you going throughout?
Well, I think one of the reasons is because when I was in school, I always found, since I am a rural kid coming from a small boy coming from rural India, at that time I never had like career guidance or people to sort of tell me where to look for, and I never got a chance to look through a telescope and so on. So I think it's my own childhood experience which shaped me to think about how to sort of bring these science outreach programs to grassroots and to rural and tribal India and so on. And I think there is so much talent in rural and tribal schools and colleges. And it's just a matter of giving them the right opportunity. So we know that all schools and colleges have a microscope, right, to look at the microbes and scan the micro world. So why not a telescope to scan the skies and look at the macro world? That's also equally important, right? And that's a realistic thing to do these days. We are not talking about telescopes of the magnitude of, uh, let's say, costing crores and crores. We are just talking about decent sized telescopes to make the kids sort of get interested in skies. And that can happen for 10,000 to 20,000 rupees, you can find a decent sized telescope. And that's pretty much affordable and feasible for most schools and colleges in India. So if you can have a microscope for every school, I think there should also be one telescope for every school. So that's been my mission and vision about bringing sort of space science and the cosmos to the rural world. There's also another thing which struck me when I was reading this biography of Ramanujan. So there's this beautiful book by Robert Canigel called The Man Who Knew Infinity. And when you read that book, you realize that there are some hidden gems in India who have so much talent, but they don't get that push or the opportunity or freedom. So, as you might know, Srinivasa Ramanujan was just a clerk in a small port trust office in Madras. And only when the great mathematician Hardy from Cambridge, when he got Ramanujan's letters, he realized this is like a hidden treasure in a small rural place in India. So there are plenty of Ramanujans we are missing in India in so many ways because we don't make science accessible to the most remote parts of India. So I think if you give them a chance to sort of get involved into these things, they can aim for the sky and even beyond. So that's my understanding.
I think it's just the little push that the kids who want to become something in life, who aspire of becoming something bigger, they need it so that they can actually achieve it. For example, you're just sitting here right in front of us. You have also studied in top institutions all over UK, Norway, France. What is something that you wish Indian education would do differently to encourage science talent? Like you said about the microscope and the telescope, how even installing one telescope in every school can make a difference. What are the other things that can do it, and what are the challenges that Indian institutions usually face?
I think it's a multi-layered problem. I think the first step is I remember when I was studying at Indian institutions, there is so much rigid coursework. There is no flexibility in changing subjects or changing things. So that's something we can learn from the Western world because you go to most of these good universities in the Western world, you get the freedom to pick and choose subjects and so on. So it could be anything. One course, I mean, you could pick physics, the next course you could take philosophy, the next course you could take, I mean, tennis or whatever. So there's so much combinations you can do. And here it's still, I think a large part of our schooling and university education, it's very rigid. For example, if you have to do physics, you have to learn this and that and all. So not necessarily all kids are going to be equally smart or equally good in these things, right? So some people, some poor student might flunk in one thing, but he might be really interested in the other thing. So, but with this sort of rigid system, they can never progress up. So that's something we could learn from the Western world. The other thing is, I have noticed that the Indian PhD students get probably the one of the most lowest stipends in the whole world. So learning pure science is all sort of very grand and classy and everything, but you also need money to survive, right? For money, you need money. So to survive in a big city, in a big metro in India, you need money and the support system and everything. So I think certainly our institutions should consider enhancing these research budgets and giving them a little more generous stipends and little more generous salaries and so on. Because India is a highly scientifically advanced country. We are in the most elite super space power now. But then we cannot afford to like give such small stipends and such small amount of money to these young researchers. There's an old saying that if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So we are actually going in that direction. If you're going to lose a lot of bright brains to other countries if you keep making them struggle at the lowest level. So, and it's also part of self-esteem and dignity and a good life and lifestyle, right? So that's something I think the Indian administration and policymakers need to take seriously because if we have to retain good scientific talent in India, we have to give them better pay and better working conditions so that it's attractive to stay back in India and not just fly to some other place. Luckily, I was not a PhD student in India. I was a PhD student in UK, and the stipend was much better than India at that time. And I did my postdoc in Norway. There, the support system and the working conditions and pay was a lot better than probably the best in the world. So I have no reason to whine and complain and moan about this. But I'm saying there are thousands and thousands of junior researchers in India who are struggling to pay the rent, to support a family, and to buy medicines for their parents and so on. So this is the dark reality of this. And I hope more people listen and do something about this.
Do you think this is the exact reason which kills the curiosity as well as the motivation of the young people aspiring to become good professionals in this particular meteor science field? And also, what do you think is stopping the policymakers from recognizing these issues? Is it the lack of awareness or deeper undervaluing of research and scientific thinking?
So what I say is not specific to any one field. This actually applies to any PhD student working in any subject in India, in most of these universities and research institutes in India. So it's not restricted to just one subject, as it were. Now, to answer your other question, the reason is because generally students at that level, they don't have that clout or contacts or access to lobby for these changes and do anything about it. So the very senior scientists and the top policymakers, they don't really care because these people are never going to get that kind of traction or a lobbying strength to change these things from their own side. But that shouldn't stop us in helping them, because it's in our interest, in the country's interest, and in the interest of the greater scientific fraternity of India, that we look after our young researchers as good as senior researchers. So I understand all these things about promotion and pay hikes and everything, but when you keep the pay of a PhD student so low compared to that of a senior scientist, when it's astronomically different, astronomical disparity between the pay conditions and benefits and so on, that actually makes these things very unattractive beyond a point. So the PhD students in India, what happens is they struggle a lot because of these things. And by the time they finish a PhD, they get frustrated and demoralized. And sometimes then they feel like leaving science. Now, the other problem is, once you are specialized in something like this and do a PhD and everything, you're actually out of that professional corporate race as well. So it's very difficult to fit into the corporate world after advancing so much in science. So it's very difficult to fit into industry, other professions, and so on. So they get sort of stranded, like midlife. And so by 30, they kind of feel clueless and lost and lonely. And I also hear a lot of these PhD students in India going to depression, and some of them considering suicides and so on. So it's a huge mental health problem in the junior science fraternity. This is not very widely talked about. People are not very vocal about it, but this is the reality in India. And I really hope the research institute support system would try to help them in some ways, because it's very difficult to survive in highly competitive science, and it's a very stressful thing. Then if you have to deal with financial stress so much, then it's like doors closing from all sides. So it becomes very difficult to sustain and survive.
It is so much happening that you forget what you actually want to do. Basically,
Yes.
we have a lot of young listeners here, students, dreamers, doers. The Youth of India Foundation family itself is a group of 2 lakh dreamers and doers. What advice would you give to someone who is curious about science but does not know where to begin?
Okay, so the first step is to stay curious. So that's a very good thing. The second thing is, these days you have a lot of opportunities and avenues to contact people anywhere in the world. So that's a huge plus. Now, when I was in school, or when I was in college, when I had to apply for like a internship or a project or something, you have to wait in a queue in a post office and send the form, and you never know whether it's going to reach before deadline and so on. There's so much logistical challenges, you see. Now there's nothing like that. You can shoot an email to anyone in any part of the world. You can even send an email to a Nobel Prize winner and ask if there's a project you can do with him or her. So these things are much more accessible, much more faster, much more easier. So make most of it. That's my first advice. The second thing is, try to follow your own passion. You don't really have to feel this peer pressure, as it were. So some people might tell you, okay, I'm going to do this job that's more cool, that's more fancy and stuff. But you don't really have to fall into that trap, because eventually, only if you follow your passion, you will be happy and you will feel like you are not doing work. Because if going to the office and doing something, if you feel like it's hard work, and if you feel it's an ordeal, then it's not a fun working life anymore, right? So ideally, your work should be something so aligned with you that you don't feel it's not, you should feel it's not hard work. You should feel it an enjoyable kind of thing. That doesn't mean to say becoming a scientist doesn't involve hard work. Obviously, whatever scientist you are, in whichever field you are, you need to put in a lot of hours and hard work and everything. But I think if it's aligned with your passion, it'll be much more enjoyable, and there'll be much more fun and excitement and euphoria when you find something new. So there is always this beautiful phrase by Richard Feynman, like the pleasure of finding things out. So you should just aim for that aesthetic pleasure if you can. Now the other things would come with it, and there'll obviously be lots of ups and downs when you do research. Um, so it's a oscillation between fascination and frustration, but it's going to be fun if you stick in long enough in this game. So it's a matter of persistence and patience. So that's what I would advise to your youth, and all the young listeners out there. You should be able to hang in here for quite a while. There's uh, finding something in science doesn't work like instant 2-minute noodles. You have to spend a little bit more time, then it's really worth it.
I think it is with almost every occupation, every job, that it is not something as easier as it sounds, as convenient as it sounds. It is just at the end of the day, your preference on how to keep going with it, how to put in all the passion you have. It is just the energy, it is the power that your passion contains, I believe.
Absolutely.
What is the one myth about space science you would want to bust right now for young people?
Okay. Well, the usual myth is things related to time travel and wormholes and stuff. So there are plenty of youngsters who ask me, so when can we actually have things like traveling through a wormhole and reaching a different universe, a parallel universe, a different world and stuff? So those things, still feel these are a bit far-fetched ideas. Obviously, I believe these things like wormholes exist in space-time and stuff, but I don't really think it's going to be practical for us to travel from one universe to the other parallel universe and come back through the wormhole and stuff. So those things, I feel it's far from reality. It's very cool in sci-fi movies and stuff and cartoons and stuff. And also things like meeting aliens on a day-to-day basis is never going to happen. But at the same time, I, as a professional astronomer, think aliens exist. So it's just a matter of when, or just a matter of time. So some of you might have read this news story about finding this sort of signature of life recently by an Indian origin scientist called Niku Madhusudan, who's a professor at Institute of Astronomy in Cambridge. So that, I think, is a fine step, a first step in the right direction. So this is essentially about finding a molecule which would only exist in a life supporting condition and emitted by a life form. So finding that sort of clue is probably the first step. So, and this is in a exoplanet, which is about 130-ish light years away. So we are not going to meet them instantly, but at the same time, this is a beautiful proof that life can exist outside. Now, if you look at this very statistically, very objectively, our universe has got like about 100 billion galaxies, and for every galaxy, there is about 100 billion stars. So we are talking about 10 to the power 11 into 10 to the power 11, which is about 10 to the power 22 stars. So there should be at least 10 to the power 22 exoplanets. So it's going to be a probably an impossible kind of fluke if Earth is only the sort of place or a planet which can support life. So that's statistically almost impossible. So so all the people who like these kind of stuff, the sort of fancy sci-fi kind of stuff, I think you should still keep a lot of hope, because 1 out of 10 to the power 22 planets, I don't think is anything special. So I think there are a lot more exoplanets which is going to be hosting life. It's just a matter of finding when and how to like establish contact with them. So this is something positive. Now the negative news is that these are all very far distances. So even with the best sort of technology these days, we are not going to able to reach them quickly. But still, confirmations of alien life or alien civilizations from outside, I think it'll be a fascinating, wonderful thing to happen in astronomy. And hopefully that will also increase a bit of funding, and astronomers can also have a little more stable and rich life, perhaps, if that happens.
Do you think we are on the verge of making these significant discoveries in the next decade, or is it still a matter of waiting for a longer time for the right technology or breakthroughs for the same?
Well, the travel thing, I think it's going to take a lot longer, because I think our present speeds is still very infantile when it comes to like exploring other stars or other exoplanets and stuff. But then who knows? I mean, these things go so rapidly, right? About 200 years back, or probably uh, many hundreds of years back, they couldn't even imagine things like a rocket or a jet plane, right? Those speeds can be unimaginable, right? So for a caveman who went on a bullock cart or something, for him, it's unimaginable to think about the speed of a rocket or a jet plane, right? So, and it's not that far in history. So I feel probably we are also very conservative in thinking about these things. Maybe after 100 years or 200 years, technology is going to radically change, and some of these speeds, what we think about is very high speed, is going to be very slow. It can be could be Mickey Mouse stuff at that time. So that's the sort of travel part of it. Now, when it comes to detection part of it, I think the latest result from this gentleman in Cambridge is very promising, and I think this is a first step. So probably we are going to we are going to detect signs of life much faster than what we think before. So, and that will be absolutely amazing result in astronomy, because we always need proof for, I mean, theoretically, you can say statistically, blah, blah, blah about these numbers, but only when you get the real proof, you can confirm about these things, right? So even for human race and the human species, it's going to be an astounding achievement if we can find another species in another world. And that would actually confirm the fact that we are not that special. And I think that's also a good thing for planet Earth, and so that humans don't feel we are over special, and we don't feel we are the only people on this universe.
I love your sense of humor. So basically, we are witnessing the beginning of a whole new era in space research. Then, what would this era look like in your view?
I think with the way things are going, we are gonna um, we are gonna do a lot of research connected with life, combining life and space travel. So in the present sort of, so let's take the latest example of this, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore going to the space station and coming back. So they spent an extended time in space station, right? So now there is a lot of research going on, things related to space travel and human bodies, how it affects our metabolism, bone structure, bone density, our own sort of the susceptibility to radiation from space and so on. So there's a lot of research being done in that way. I think it's called aviation medicine or something of that sort. Maybe that's 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 an area which is going to get a lot of it's going to become a hot topic in future, because when you think about colonizing Mars and thinking about setting up a moon village and so on, this is what you need, right? You need research about how these things would affect human body, whether we can actually survive there, whether you can sustain there for a long time and so on. So people like Elon Musk are very ambitious, and they actually want to build sort of villages and cities and different celestial bodies and so on. So European Space Agency is thinking about interesting missions related to setting up a village, a moon village. So there is a lot of interesting research done in this direction. Now, I don't exactly know when these things are going to materialize, because these are all very ambitious projects. But as time goes by, I think many of these things can happen, because if you look at, let's say, the history of last 100 years, let's think about it. Now, when the Wright brothers did their first invention of an airplane, they never imagined you could actually create the atmosphere in a cabin in an aeroplane where you can live and breathe and drink and eat, right? They would have never imagined that. So the way these things evolve, it can be pretty fast. Now, in a good airline jet, whether it's private or commercial, it's almost like in your living room, right? You can, in the business class, it's almost like your party room, right? You can do whatever you like on Earth, the same thing you can do on plane, right? So it's not realistically impossible to do these things on other planets, I think. I mean, other celestial bodies. But the cost factor, I mean, the cost, the logistics, the resources involved in these things is going to be astronomical in every sense. So I don't really know the sort of trade-off. So the question is, when it comes to colonizing Mars and like taking a lot of people from Earth to Mars and so on, obviously taking even if, let's say, in the worst case scenario, Earth Earth goes through some very difficult climate crisis or something, we are not going to be able to like take everyone from Earth and sort of save them, as it were. So then the question is, how do you handpick people? That's where the problem comes, right? So human beings in that way are not that straightforward when it comes to cherry picking people, whom to save and whom not to save. So that's the kind of worries I have inside me. The astronomy part is probably easier. The social science part is much more difficult.
Picking out the privileged ones, unprivileged ones.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So when you board a airline, uh, when you board an airline in the economy class and in the business class, you see a radical difference in attitudes and behavior and manners and everything, right? So the way you're
I
treated.
would term it as an astronomical difference now.
Yes, yeah. So that's the thing. So when the only the privileged people get handpicked to go to a certain place, and when other people are sort of left to rot in hell, that doesn't sound nice, right? That's not the sort of value systems we aspire in human civilization when we call it a civilization. So those are very strong ethical questions we have to look at when space travel develops beyond a point. So even the space travel you see, these were all very rich billionaires who went on a spin, right? And so the question is, how do you make it accessible to people from all sides? Because if you're thinking about things like a climate crisis on Earth and taking everyone with you, or taking a lot of people with you to a different celestial body, I think a much more feasible, less costly plan is to save our own planet, right? So if you are a little more mindful, and if you're a little more less greedy, I think there is good chance that we could prevent our own Earth from getting into a total crisis. So that's a decision we have to take. Unfortunately, astronomers don't have much say in these things. It's the people probably in the Wall Street who might have a say on these things. So there's nothing much we can do, but we really hope um, we don't reach that state where space travel has to be the only alternative to save the human species and so on. I really hope and pray for that.
I think sustainability is a major point that comes in to this sphere when we're talking about this. How do you look at sustainability, and how do you think we can provide a better future to the coming generations?
I think it has a lot to do with getting our priorities right. So I don't really know whether there is a one golden rule which can do this, because we essentially need a trade-off, right? We need economic activity on one side, but at the same time, not at the brutal cost of like completely sort of plundering the entire nature. So there should be a balance, right? It's a bit like you need a little bit of wood to make your houses and stuff, but you shouldn't like deforest the whole thing, right? So the question is, how do we reach that kind of a sweet spot where you have a trade-off between your conveniences and logistics and everything with the idea of preventing and saving our own planet? I think one of the things which many people might find it very unrealistic is some of us have to decide that there is only a now the whole world has sort of reached a peak in the lifestyle thing. So the question is, where do we stop, right? So um, if everyone wants a private jet, is that the place? Is that the route we're gonna go? Or everyone going in a comfortable public transport, is that the route we're going to go? So that's a question of, it's a multi-layered question of a lot of economics, a lot of science, a lot of social science, a lot of politics, everything getting involved. But my simple theory is uh, the problem which we don't realize right now is many people are into, let's say, thinking about changing all the sort of countryside and urbanizing it. So the idea of constructing these huge skyscrapers and buildings as a sign of development and not thinking about other things. So then there is this question as to whether that's the development we think. I mean, destroying all the rivers and forests and making these high-rise buildings. Then now beyond a point, you don't have water, you don't have fresh air, you don't have clean food or anything. Then you get stuck, right? You can't just go back in time and undo these things. So this is something I think the climate scientists need to really sort of make awareness on a global scale, because things related to sea level rise and so on, I think there is less awareness among the common public about these things and as to how serious these things are. So we have to probably bring these things into the national forefront of conversations. It should make headlines so that people think about these things. One should make a headline like your favorite resort in this place is going to get submerged in so many years. Only then these things would sort of capture your imagination.
Development through this can be termed as a blessing, but in disguise, as in it is providing us with all the benefits right now, but somehow taking away the benefits of our future generation, right?
Yes.
So, brings me to my next question. You talked about interactions with young people, right? What is the one most memorable conversation that you have had with a kid of some school that you have gone to visit, or something like that?
Well, in general, I get a lot of interesting questions about black holes and alien life and their own theories about exoplanets and so on. So I get to hear very interesting thoughts and questions from different sides. One thing which I found very interesting from a tribal kid in Kerala is he asked me what is the maximum number of black holes you can have in the center of a galaxy. So I was very puzzled and totally lost, because even I don't know the answer for these things. So, and he was asking me, what is the maximum number of stars you can have in a single stellar system? I mean, so we have our solar system, right? So there are other stellar systems with binary stars, triple star systems, and so on. So you can have multiple stars in uh, as part of this, like just like our solar system, you can have a stellar system with multiple stars. now you can also have different planets going around in different ways. So he asked me what is the maximum number of stars you can have in one stellar system. So I was really puzzled, and I had no idea. And I have never thought in that direction. So I actually felt there is a lot of these curiosity and really amazing sort of depth of curiosity in youngsters. It's just a matter of nurturing them. So kids like these, when they get into the game of astronomy, they're going to do landmark contributions, do different milestones in terms of understanding these things. So the as I said, the whole idea is to guide them or steer them in the right direction. You just need some pointers and some guiding light. I mean, they have the brain, they are bright and smart and everything. The young generation kids, I don't believe this theory of a lot of these old uncles saying they don't have attention span and they don't listen, they don't read and stuff. I don't subscribe to that idea. The youngsters I meet, they read a lot, they're very interested, they're bright and smart and brilliant and everything. Probably they have a little bit of problems when it comes to like maybe following a deadline or maybe reaching on time or something, some small kind of things. But otherwise, I have a very positive impression about the youth of our country and the youngsters in general. And they have a lot of potential inside. It's just a matter of channeling these things in the right direction. And for that, you just need few role models and few mentors and few good people to inspire them. And India has got plenty of good role models and good people to do these things. It's just a matter of connecting them in the right way.
Right. True. About the reading part, I believe that you are an avid book reader by all the references that you have given in the podcast itself. How do you think reading books can be inculcated in everyone's routine and it is something that should be inculcated?
Well, I think the concept of reading is also getting redefined these days. So pre-COVID era, I was a person who used to read these hard copies, the sort of things you can touch and feel. But post-COVID era, I'm more of an audiobook person. So I have listened to loads and loads of audiobooks during the COVID time. So when I was working, I used to listen to some audiobooks. When I was, I mean, whatever activity I was doing, I found it very interesting to listen to audiobooks. So that actually changed my perspective about reading. So now I think we also have to change from that traditional mold of this thing. So many youngsters I know, they read on Kindle, their own devices, they don't carry books in their handbag and stuff. So that's totally fine because when you travel a lot, you can't afford to carry loads of books and give that extra money to the airline to carry these books, right? So it's much better you have it on your devices. You can have thousands of books on your device. It doesn't weigh even 1 gram extra, right? So there is some statistics as to have enough electrons to be 1 gram with the number of books. There is some statistics somewhere, and you can read billions of books apparently. So you don't have to carry anything. So I think that's a huge sort of technological advance because now all these youngsters can find any book from anywhere just on their fingertips and just listen to it or read it on their device. And so my tips for people is don't rely only on self-help books. I know there are some people who was too much into self-help books, but these self-help books also have this problem that it might be a mantra which works for the author, but not necessarily for everyone else, right? We all have our own mantra which works, right? So if I say I'm a someone who's slightly nocturnal who likes to read or write during the night, and if I say everyone should do that, that wouldn't work, right?
Right.
Now there are a lot of people. Some are larks, some are owls, some are in between, and some people have their own ways of doing it, right? For some people, they learn 5 days before the exam. For some people, it's a last minute job. So different things work for different people. So my general suggestion to youngsters is don't just read self-help books because that might not work for you. You might be a different sort of personality, different personality altogether. So read all kinds of books. You shouldn't just be fixated on one genre. You should learn all kinds of things, and not just science. Don't never be a Sheldon or anything like in Big Bang Theory. You should also enjoy social life, and you should enjoy partying, and you should enjoy sports, and you should enjoy dating and everything. So don't be like a Sheldon if you're thinking about becoming a scientist. Sheldon is a bad example for being a scientist. You should have all the fun as well as you should also have all the science and make it jazzy and make it fun.
About having fun and doing everything all at once. Do you think the fear of missing out, which we term as FOMO, is one of the problems that our generation is facing right now?
I think there is a bit of that because sometimes when I go for some of these sports events or some of these concerts and stuff. So when I went for the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, a lot of these youngsters who were always on their phones. So it was always about sort of shooting this video footage and uploading on Insta and stuff. But then why don't you watch the game, man? You're here. So if you're not watching the game from there, then when would you watch it? So watch with your own eyes, right? You're in that stadium. The action is right in front of you. But then why do you look through your phone? So that is something to do with this FOMO because they always think there is someone else who's going to upload this thing, this goal, and they are going to get a lot of likes and that post is going to be hit. So I also want to be part of that show. Now that's something to do with psychology. The question is whether you are enjoying the game or whether you're enjoying other people seeing you are enjoying the game. So that's the problem, right? So this that FOMO we have to sort of break because the idea should be you should enjoy the game or concert or whatever it is for yourself. Rest doesn't matter. The other thing, whether other people get the perception that you're doing something magnificent or fantastic, that is all secondary, right? You don't need that validation. So I think the youngsters should also sort of try, maybe, okay, when you go to a concert or when you go to some Shah Rukh Khan event, take one photo and upload it. That's fine. But when you are listening to Shah Rukh Khan on stage, try to be present there. You don't be on the phone and keep on sort of checking comments and all that. You can do that all later, right? You should be present in the moment.
I think as a content creator, I would relate to that problem as well. It was just my recent trip last week. I was in Leh Ladakh and I was sitting beside my driver, the first front seat, and I was recording everything. And just as while I was recording, he went like, "You really need to soak in the moments yourself, then recording it." And that hit me hard, and I could not even use my mobile after that. I was like, "That is extremely true." So that is one
Yeah.
problem that most of the people in our generation is facing right now. So I just wanted to
But in
ask, which
general,
brings me to the
but in
next
general,
question.
but let me just say one thing.
Yes,
See,
yes.
if your profession is a content creator or if you're a social media influencer or something, that's part of your job. Then that doesn't matter because that is your professional life, right? But I'm talking about in general. In general, when everyone does that, what happens is we actually miss the fun while we are there. So let's say you go to a big festival, there's some big mela, or let's say the Kumbh Mela. So the Kumbh Mela, you try to find a sadhu and interact with them and take a dubki and everything, rather than taking everything on the video. Then you're not present there, right? If you do that all the time, that's the thing.
About the Kumbh Mela, that was the exact very reason. The FOMO was the exact very reason it faced so much of crowd at once this year, and after that, it was completely empty. Uh, Again, irrelevant information, but since I am a person who travels a lot, it
Mhm.
brings me to ideas like these. Okay, so the next question I would want to ask is, if you have 10 minutes to the room full of Indian astronauts and scientists, future astronauts and scientists, what is the one thing that you would want them to always remember?
Well, one thing I want to remember, I want all of them to remember is the sacrifices the the scientists and space travelers, astronomers, astronauts, and various other people who are also part of a lot of logistics support staff who have put in before our time. See, there is this old saying that standing on the shoulders of the giants, right? So we are all able to see a little bit further because we are standing on the shoulders of giants. So a lot of people have gone through so much sacrifices, and it's only because of that we were able to advance and do these things in a much easier, faster way. So when an astronaut flies to space, he or she should also think about people like Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, and Collins, and all these people who have gone before them. And when the first Gaganaut or the Gagan Yatri from India goes, he or she should also try to remember people like Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, who went as the first Indian in space, and so on. So in a way, it's a bit of a tribute to them, a little bit of gratitude to them, because it's because of their sacrifices and their time and their risk taking. The risks were much higher at that time compared to now. It's because of that adventure gene in them that the space exploration things have advanced so much. So it's a kind of a nice thing to learn from these people. So if you're a young astronaut, I would say try to talk to these older astronauts as well. They also have a little bit of wisdom to share and a little bit of interesting tips and tricks to convey to you. I remember meeting this Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma. He invited kindly to his home near Ooty. We had very fascinating, interesting conversations with him, and he was talking about his experiences in going to space. And when you go to space, you don't see borders and boundaries. So all these things you see, like various things we do to separate and divide ourselves on Earth, that none of that works when you fly to space. You just see the whole thing as one Mother Earth. There is only one address. That's what he said. And I found that very fascinating because uh, so much competition and ego and narcissism and all these things which happen on planet Earth, if we can actually take a step back and look at this as one small speck of a thing out of countless other things, that makes the whole thing in a different perspective, right? So Rakesh Sharma had that perspective, and that's the wisdom from a space traveler. A lot of astronomers can also learn from that. There are plenty of astronomers also who have inflated astronomical amounts of ego. So we could learn a wee bit from astronauts in that way, I think.
Very true. It is also about the gratitude and gratefulness that one should hold if they reach that point in their life. Lastly, let us imagine that you could send a written message on a comet passing Earth. What would you want the youth to read from it?
Okay, so I think this whole thing is about um, the time span or lifespan of civilization. So I think one thing, so for example, if it was a comet, could be a short period comet, long period comet. It could be comet coming from far areas far beyond Neptune. It could be coming from a place called Oort cloud. So all these things signifies time. So uh, even when it comes to finding alien civilizations and things, these all also depend on the time, right? For example, if an alien visited Earth 65 million years back, they would actually see the dinosaurs as the most prime species, right? The most sort of dominant species on this planet. Now, now if an alien visits Earth, it's the humans, which is the dominant species. So I always think all these messages itself is like these sort of filaments in time. It depends on where it goes, what time it reaches, and so on. So if we can send a message on Comet, we could actually say something like we are in this era, but nobody knows after 50,000 years or 100,000 years what it's going to be, right? And something the youth can learn from this whole thing is we shouldn't be just fixated on finding intelligent life alone, because the our concept of this alien civilization things have come from these Hollywood movies and so on. So in Hollywood movies, it's all about things which are like scary monsters and stuff. So we are always thinking about very sort of hyperactive sort of structures which come as aliens, but it could be something very different. I mean, think about like a beautiful forest, but probably no animals at all in a different exoplanet. I mean, that's not totally impossible, right? You have only plants, you don't have any. only flora and no fauna. Who there's nothing stopping them, right? So, so our idea about finding life itself also have to evolve. So we have to think about it's not just about intelligent life. It could be life in any form, life in forms which we don't know, and that I think is the most beauty of science. And the reality is, only then we understand the beauty of things like the Darwinian evolution, the natural selection and the Darwinian instincts and so on, because it will be a great thing to test whether things related to this origin of species, which Darwin says is actually applicable to all exoplanets or other civilizations or other life forms in other parts of the universe. That would be an amazing test in terms of pure biology. And it will be a great thing to see this astrobiology flourish and develop in that way.
That is great. Now, lastly, one message, like one statement that every youth should follow in their lives. One statement, one practice that every youth should follow.
Well, I think the simplest thing is, uh, now this is going to sound a little controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. There is this whole question about this. I really don't know whether the so-called sanity, the so-called mental sanity, is such a sacred thing, because almost every best invention or best research or best discovery have come from small spurts of madness. So the whole thing, when the best achievement in art, science, or sports, they have always come from small spurts of madness. So so there is so much probably Zen wisdom and everything saying you be balanced and calm and peaceful all the time. I don't really think that makes the barrier breaking science or barrier breaking sports or barrier breaking arts. For that, you have to be crazy and a little bit insane at times. I'm not saying be crazy and insane all the time, but you have to be a little wild at times. Only then you change things. Now, all the other Zen, meditation, yoga, everything you can do at other times to make yourself grounded and everything. That's all good. But this is what I would tell the youth. So stay wild, and then you find more fun. But don't don't take it as a partying message for every night. I mean, it's in the purest aesthetic sense. Yeah,
That is really nice. That is the one mantra that I actually follow in my life, to be spontaneous, be wild, be crazy. That is
good.
it for the conversation. Thank you so much, Ashwin Sekhar. It was lovely having you today. Thank you so much for this. We would
Thanks very
love
much.
to invite you over for the other initiatives of Youth of India Foundation as well, whenever
Sure,
convenient.
sure,
Thank you
sure
so
thing.
much once again.
Sure thing. I'm very happy to collaborate, and lovely talking to you. And I can see that you also have a lot of passion in whatever you do. So thanks very much and keep up the great work. Okay.
Thank you so much.
See
Thank
ya.
you.
Bye bye.
Sure.